All right, today we have a big day on the broadcast. We are going to cover some things on here that are going to give you a tremendous amount of confidence when it comes to your investing and looking at the market and just trying to figure out what to do. Are there stocks you should buy that you've kind of wondered whether you should buy them or not? Should you wait? Where's the market going? One of the things that I found just looking today is that everything is basically, when you dig down underneath the surface, everything is kind of rowing in the same direction. And so today we're going to talk about some specific data that I've seen that if you don't act on, you're nuts. I mean, it's an absolute, it's like insider trading. It's like having somebody who's like the CEO of a company you want to buy their stock from, and you meet them for happy hour over a beer, and they share this secret new product that they're going to launch that's going to take over the market. I mean, it's like that level of confidence on what you want to do. So today, and specifically, we're going to talk about data that I've seen looking at today that just everything paints the exact same picture on what's going on. So first thing we're going to do, we look at the market today. Market went down under a point, and our portfolio basically did the same thing and recovered a little bit. So dead flat. I mean, it's just 0 and 0, just round down to 0, round up to 0. So but as we go down to the news, the first things that we see on here is that stocks closed lower despite jobless claims fall. What we got to understand is that for the last almost 4 months, you've seen jobless claims fall. In other words, the people that are getting laid off is just dramatically gone down, while you've seen people that are getting rehired going back up, which is a great sign. Now, that's empirical. The question is, what's the freeway test? Now, the freeway test means when you get on the freeway, is the amount of traffic representative of normal living or of COVID? What I mean by that is, like, there's this one freeway that I used to drive down, and it would just be packed. And if I'm trying to go to a destination and I have a choice of this freeway or the other freeway, I always took the other one because this one was just nuts. It was just jam-packed, and I didn't want any part of it. And then COVID hit, and then there was nobody on it. I mean, it was just empty, right? And so I was actually driving down yesterday, and I totally hit traffic going down, and then on my way up, I totally hit traffic going up. It wasn't the same level as pre-COVID, but it was about 70%. I mean, it was making me question whether to stay on the freeway a little bit. And so I was sitting here going, about a month ago, it reminded me, I was sitting here going, I actually can't wait for traffic, because that means that everybody's back to work and things are going normal. And yeah, traffic's an inconvenience. And by the way, traffic in Southern California is not like traffic in Ohio. It's way different. So, as much as that you don't like sitting in standstill traffic on the freeway, if it means people have their jobs back, then I'll root for that traffic any day of the week. So anyway, so that was really huge. So you look at this and you say, okay, the job claims are falling, and yet the stock market isn't moving. Well, all that's saying is that the value of the future market, in other words, the trend where things are going, is higher, but yet the market isn't moving, which means you have more of an upside. All right. So and this is in the Wall Street Journal. So this is not any political thing whatsoever. They're probably one of the most apolitical places, which is rare nowadays, believe it or not, that you can find. But when it comes to numbers and the economy, I mean, they pretty much, as far as I've ever seen, they kind of run straight down the middle. So the next question is, and this really drives everything, and this is even why we're doing all this, is, okay, what's the COVID status? And I'm not going to speak to COVID status in your place, but I'll look at it at mine. And the newspaper here in San Diego, the San Diego Union Tribune, does an absolutely stellar job breaking things down. Not necessarily from an aesthetic point. I mean, they do well in that, but they actually are really fair with the numbers, and they let you parse it out and look at things and break it down. And so overall, one of the things that we found here is some really key things that I've noticed over the last week or so. So number one is, well, you can see the curve starting to, I don't want to say flatten the curve because it's using the wrong one, but it's starting to level off a little bit. But when we look at new cases by day, we started ramping up case testing right here. And you have differences between this day and this day. They're just the days they're turned in. So you can just call these an average of right here. So the testing basically went up to here, flattened up across here, maybe went up a little bit, and then we took the black diamond down. Okay? And you say, well, why are the cases going down? Well, We look at the cases by day, and it's like, well, there's probably not as many people who are getting the virus. Now, we're in a county of 3 million people. And so when you start to see the case numbers go down, basically if you're looking at a trend chart, or in statistics we call it a regression chart, that says something. But one of the things you got to understand is that the governor of our state, who, by the way, Gavin Newsom in California, needs to be recalled. I've already signed the recall petition, and actually I was talking to one of my friends about it, and she's like, I told her, I was like, yeah, I signed it. She goes, I signed it twice. So he actually has all our restaurants closed and all our indoor businesses closed. And so like I was supposed to get my hair cut yesterday, but the salon's closed. So she's coming over here on Tuesday. So, I mean, business is going to get done one way or the other. You can either do it the right way and let people be responsible, or you can basically make a black market go into play. And it reminds me, back in the Obama years, they put these regulations on dishwashers where you had to, like, the dishwasher had to use half as much water. And this is no joke. This was like 2010, 2011. The guy just gets into office and he decides, my main policy focus is going to be dishwasher consumption. Like, you got to be kidding me. Well, the problem is the dishwashers didn't work that well. So people ended up just manually washing their dishes again, which used like probably 20 times as much water, if not 30 times as much water. So it was a policy that on its face, you thought, okay, well, it makes sense. We want to use less water. But in reality, it doesn't pass the people test. And so you have all these businesses in San Diego County that are closed. Meanwhile, look at this trend on cases. It's just plummeting, right? So then you look at testing. Testing, it had an upward trend as we go through here. We have loosened restrictions or up testing, and then you have a total anomaly right here. You can kind of just ignore that from a statistical standpoint. But it's basically going up, and then we start to see it going down. So you're saying, well, why is the testing going down? Well, the testing's going down. I don't think it's because they're lacking money. I think it's because they're lacking people. It comes to a point, and it's like anything else, whether it's a business or anything else. Your first customers are going to be your most fervent, right? Your first people on your email list are going to be your most fervent. And then over time, when you scale up, the majority of the people that you have, you may scale up and get a ton of customers or a ton of people on your email list, but they're generally on an average not going to be as fervent as your initial customer. So you had all these people that are worried that they might be sick, and they're getting tested, and 95, 96% of them, at least in San Diego, were negative. And so they're just not going to get tested again for the most part. And you start to see that going down. They're running out of people, at least they will be soon. They're having a problem getting enough people testing, and so they're running out of people to test, and the number is going down. So then you say, okay, well, this is where the newspaper does a really good job. What's the average test result? And so this is if you take 1,000 people and or 100 people to say, and you test them, no matter how many tests you do. Early on, it was 8% of the people were positives, and it's probably because that's when the virus was ramping up. And then when the virus went down and restrictions were loosened, it got down to, let's see, what's the low here? Basically 2.5%. And then it went up, and our dear governor decided to shut everything down. Well, now it's down to 4.7. So no matter what happens, we're actually, the state average is like 7.5, and we're only at 4.7. As a result, all these businesses are closed, which affects the economy. Okay. So, and I want to go over these details because we're going to talk about those when we get into the stocks we're going to hit. So we start to see the hospitalizations go up, and now we see them going down. All right. So as we go down to here, this is the daily hospital census. This is originally in March, when they talked about 15 days to flatten the curve. It was to basically create time to make sure the hospitals were not overrun. Well, in San Diego County, this is our bed capacity. It's 6,112 beds. You know how many people are using COVID right now? 338. In other words, it's not a problem. And even if you took all the elective surgeries and all the other surgeries that are having, you have 4,000 people that are using beds, you add another 300, we're nowhere near even close. And if it really were a problem, you could take the elective surgeries out, lower this number dramatically. but it's not a problem. I mean, it's like, I don't want to call it fake because it's not fake, but it's a little bit of a shell game going on. So there's not really a problem here, and yet the economy's down. You look at the number of deaths. You had a small spike in deaths here, and then it dramatically went down. I mean, look at that trend line. But then when you look at the deaths, we're going to look at the breakdown. They're all 80 to 89 years old. Okay, about a little more, depends on a little more female as you get older, a little more male as you get younger. But here in San Diego County, this is the Mexico line, they're all down in this one corner. So everybody up here and everybody over here is not having a problem. So it's funny, as they say, 50 deaths to 79 deaths in an area this large. This is the size of Rhode Island. And yet in all this area right here, you've had no more than 79 deaths. It's nuts. So good public policy would tell you that you want to go ahead and maybe if you're going to close businesses, close it here, but don't close them here. So as we go down to deaths, they list all these different things: age, date, gender, ethnicity, basically the part of San Diego, and whether they had underlying medical conditions that were a problem. So we're going to go all the way to the end, and all of them were yes. And then look at the ages here: 88, 96, 67, 70, 95, 72, 63, 82. I mean, these people, if you're 96 or 88, you have lived a long life. So then we say, okay, well, what about the ones before them? Every single one of them before them has an underlying medical condition. Now look at the ages here: 85, 76. I mean, 51's the low one: 85, 85, 90, 81, 76, 77. And so the reason I bring this up is because we have a disease who's hitting these old people really bad, but it's not hitting anybody else. So we look at some of the stocks we're going to talk about. AMC went up today by 15%, mainly because they confirmed they were going to be opening in a few days. And so they had delayed it, and they're going to be having something that's like 15 cents for a movie ticket or something like that. But it's a sign that they're going to be opening things up. And this is a movie theater. And they always say if you're going to catch COVID, it's going to be indoors with central ventilation and in a place where you're around people for an extended period of time. We can call that a movie theater, okay? And yet they're opening and the stock is going up. So this is one, I mean, I got to tell you, if it's one you're considering buying, movie theaters might be one as kind of a side bet, but they're completely undervalued. So taking into what we looked at before, Velocity Financial, they do mortgages. They're up 7% today. If everything that I've seen on the freeway and all the data that we've seen for COVID is playing out, you're going to see a lot of people refinancing houses and maybe, with their earnings from these videos, buying a house for the first time. So you're going to see this start to take off. So this one is a great stock. I am not touching this. I have a nice little asset allocation for this one. This one's doing really well for right now, but I have a feeling this one's going to do really well going forward. All right, AVCT, this one went down 8% today, and part of it's just, I think it was some profit taken that we're going to see here, but this one is not really a COVID reopening stock. So this one might have been people selling AVCT to move into the AMCs of the world. We talked about last few days, we talked about two sectors that I think are going to really take off. They're undervalued, and when people start working and being on the freeway more often are going to be casinos and oil stocks. So we look at Caesar Entertainment. They're up 7% today, actually almost 8.5% today. And I have a big stake in this, basically about 10 grand in this right now. And as you start to see people opening up and going to casinos, I mean, if you're going to talk about anybody that's going to handle airflow and air filters and making sure that people are safe, it's going to be casinos. This one is a no-brainer. It's a 90% buy. One of the best things I ever did. And then DraftKings, I always say Donkey Kong because of the DKNY or DKNG. This one went up 7% today, partially because there's a little bit of clarification about college football. So you had the Big Ten decide to cancel their season, and we'll talk about that in a second. You had the Pac-10 decide to cancel their season. But the Big 12's on hold. Like they're still good to go for the time being. The ACC says we're 100% in. The SEC says we're 100% in. And those are the two biggest East Coast football leagues where the majority of the population is. So that's going to be huge. On the other hand, we're going to see what happens, but there's a movement out for people that are going to be canceling their Pac-10 network and their Big 10 network subscription because there's no programming. So we're going to see if the conferences change their mind. And somebody was talking about, I think it was Clay Travis on Outkick, he was talking about how Iowa State can play because they're in the Big 12, and yet Iowa cannot. And yet they're literally like a driving distance between the two schools. So we're going to see what plays out. The NFL is going to be starting pretty soon. They had a guy, they're taking things very seriously. They had an undrafted rookie who did the Darwin Award, was basically in the bubble, in their Seattle bubble, in the hotel, and he tried to sneak a girl into the room and dressed her up in Seahawks clothes, like no joke, to try to make people think she's a player. Like, do you think a girl is going to be confused with a football player? Like, are you kidding me? And so he got cut, and it came out today, big time. Might have a hard time finding a job in the COVID thing since you're breaking that. But he's an undrafted guy. It's not like he was a first-round pick or a second-round pick where, you know, the guy's going to make tons of money or they have tons invested in him. I mean, they let him loose like he was nothing. So they're taking things very seriously. So DraftKings, again, I think is one that will play very well going forward. All right, so let's take a look at our numbers. Our upside numbers, again, nothing really changed that much. Texas hospitality is still there, but we're really good in an oil sector, so I'm not necessarily rushing to get there. But there is one play that I was thinking of doing potentially that we haven't really talked about today, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. Norwegian Cruise Line is up there. And I'm still thinking about that a little bit because these ones have the biggest swing. So I guess what I would say with Norwegian is if they have a big swing, like let's say they have a 20% down or a 15% down day, I might consider buying the dip because this upside is going to go up, and then buy it because the cruise lines and the airlines seem to have the wildest swings of any of the stocks going up or down. So if I can somebody else takes the hit for the downswing, I'll be glad to buy it low, and then we'll see what happens at that point. So Dave & Buster's kind of the same thing to a little bit lesser of a degree. But if I were to do anything to buy this one, there's one stock that I would potentially liquidate is Red Robin Group. And I was looking at this today, and I still think it's a no. I'd say there's two reasons. One, it's close to zero, and I have a rule where I don't sell things for a loss. So I would sell that as a slight profit and reallocate the money since it's about $2,500. But I have a feeling this one's going to jump up earlier. So I'll show you what I looked at when I was looking at Red Robin. So as I was going through the analysis on that, I was looking at Red Robin, and it was up 1.5% today. But I looked at it for the last 3 months, and this was Death Day, and it has these giant spikes. Like whenever there's good news, it's rapid spikes. And the down spike sometimes is as much, sometimes it's a little bit, I don't know. But it's been a little flat lately, and it's down. I have a feeling that the day I sell it, it's probably going to have a big spike. But this is one of those stocks that I looked at, and I said, okay, where is the top spike? It got, when we had things that started to reopen, this thing was approaching 20, and it's sitting under 10 right now. So I said, okay, well, I could trade it in for Texas hospitality, but there's no way I want to do that. I want to stay with this. I have a feeling this one is poised for a big rise, and we'll stick where it's at. But for right now, leaders in the clubhouse, PVAC, we're between tripling and quadrupling. Crestwood Equity, we're about tripling our money. Redwood Trust is a REIT. We're doing really well on that one. Let's see. AVCT, again, that's the cloud company. We're not going to touch that one as well. And it'd be funny if Amazon tried to buy that one as well because they have their cloud service, and Microsoft has their cloud service. So it'd be interesting if they tried to do that. I don't think they're going to do that, but it'd be interesting if they do. Caesars Entertainment, we're more than doubling. Signet Jewelers, which is the mall jewelry store chain, is doing really well as well. Of the stocks we have currently from the amount that we've bought, we're up 43%. And overall, we're up 89%. And this is when things are in flux. There's a big election coming up, and there's a lot of uncertainty. We're still up 89%. Once things start to get settled down and there's less uncertainty in the market, you're going to see this number take off. So what are you going to do? I showed you a lot of information today. I showed you a lot of data. All the oars are rowing in the same direction, and we're sitting at a place where people don't know what's going to happen, and yet all the underlying data is saying the same thing. The disease is going away. The disease is going away. They're having a hard time getting people to come in for a test. And those that are dying are like 600 years old. They're like the people in Genesis. They're like Methuselah and Noah and Lamech. And college football is happening. People are going into airlines. People are going into movie theaters. People are refinancing their mortgages. They're going to casinos. I mean, what other information do you need? It's so obvious, and yet the stocks haven't popped yet. Buy now, set your portfolio. If you have any questions, let me know. If you don't have a Robinhood account yet, there's a link in the video description. You'll get a free stock on it. You'll also get a link where you can actually access and open up this chart so you can look at it in detail, and you can even steal and borrow it and cheat and say that it's yours for all you want. I don't really care, but get started now. There's really not much I can tell you to do at this point. This is where you got to be poised and ready to go. It's like the guy who spent 3 months preparing for the NFL Combine, and he shows up and he crushes it. And you know the guy, you've seen his training, you know what he's going to do, and this is where you get to bet that he's going to blow away the numbers before he does that. So get started now. It's time to make some money.
To get more information on the sales cheat code, go ahead and click on the subscribe button below. Also, down below in the video description, down there, there's a link that takes you to our website that gives you additional content, some additional freebies that we have, and gives you information on some programs that we have that have been proven to help people to make sales easy so that you can make the kind of money you want, live the lifestyle that you've always wanted, and not have to struggle in the process. And what might be the coolest thing of all is you don't have to put much effort into it. It truly is a cheat code that most people don't know about. And it's a cheat code that can change your life today. So click on the link below and let me help you start to experience these results starting right now.